Yes, you are a stylist. You look fabulous. That's very obvious.
Thank you.
Yes, I read in an interview you did, someone was interviewing you about your career, Miquelle, and you said, when I was a little girl, I fell in love with fashion. I played dress up in my mother's closet. What did you like to put on? What did you love about your mother's wardrobe and her style?
My mother's wardrobe was very, I would say, clean and sophisticated, like a Claire Huxtable type of vibe. And I would mostly play in like her handbags and her nightgowns. And I would just go to like imaginary land.
And that was when you were very, very young.
Yes.
Right? Because your mother was arrested when you were 10 years old.
Correct.
What do you remember about that day and the weeks that followed? Did you understand what had happened?
Actually, I did understand what happened. I just didn't allow my family to know that I understood what happened because I don't think that they were strong enough to grasp that conversation with a 10-year-old. So my mom, she took me to school, and then she just didn't pick me up. And then when some not strangers, but random people picked me up, and my mom was always there for me, so I knew something was up within that situation. And then when I got home, the whole house had been ransacked, and my grandmother and her sisters were there alongside my aunt. And I asked, what's going on with the house? Why does it look like this? And then everyone had looked like someone had passed away. And my grandmother said, well, we've been cleaning. And I'm like, Grandma, when you clean, things get better. This is not cleaning.
You're smart.
So I just left them at the table at that point because I knew that something had happened and they didn't want to talk. So I ran upstairs and I was like, let me find my mom's purse. And I found it and it was empty and it just had like a few quarters in the bottom. And at that point, that's when I realized that I was chosen to lead and set an example for children with incarcerated parents.
Your mother has a very heavy sentence, a very harsh sentence, 2 life sentences plus 50, all surrounding a drug charge, which also involved a murder. And the person who testified against her, who committed the murder, didn't do any time, is that right?
That's correct. He received full immunity and then my mom went to prison for drug conspiracy.
One of the things that's amazing about your story with your mom is your mother did not let proximity get in the way of parenting. She was connected to you throughout your whole life. In fact, there was one psychologist at Danbury facility that said that she'd never seen a bond like the one between you and your mom, that it was one for the books, that's how she put it. What did you do that allowed you to stay so close to your mom? What were some of the workarounds so that she could be really involved and invested in you?
Well, when a person goes to prison, the family members go as well. It's just a different type of level. Obviously, they're not behind bars, but they're still dealing with the same situations. Even with going to visit, they're treated a certain way. So instead of being a statistic and getting caught up in like, oh, my life and why did this happen, we still have to keep going. Like my mom isn't dead, I'm not dead, so we have to live. And my mom, we would read books together, do fashion things together. My mom helps put inspiration boards together. She's typed every resume that has gotten me every job that I've ever had. And we just kept our bond because my mom was my best friend, and she still is. So we didn't want to let the prison situation separate us, even though we were separated. So it's just about continuing the relationship and building and being there for your kid and for the child being there for their mom.
We're there for each other.
Or their parent.
John, I want to bring you into the conversation. When did Governor Brown commute your sentence?
My sentence got commuted in the middle of August
Of this year.
of this year.
What's your transition been like?
It's everything that I used to look forward to, with all the ups and all the downs. Because as much as I would like to say that, and I do really mean this, that every single moment is like a blessing to me. Like, I can go to a subway station and just be fascinated at the way people are all on their phones, they're talking, they're just navigating the world and not really understanding where they are and the chance they have. But on the other end too, it's very difficult.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
One of the ways that you express yourself beautifully is through writing, and you've been that way your whole life. I want to walk back to your high school years. You've described to us that, us meaning the Atlantic folks backstage, that you were living kind of a double life in high school, that you were learning to be this great writer, but you were out in the streets in the other half of your life. Mm-hmm. What was it like to live those two kind of lives, and why was that happening for you?
It was difficult. One thing that I always really felt since growing up was that prison was meant for me. And this idea came because family members that I had were in prison, friends I had that I grew up with were in prison. And it's messed up to say, I remember my mom telling me since I was a little kid, you're gonna go two places, dead or in jail. And so even though deep down I wanted to like prove her wrong, something about me just like lashed out and, okay, I could be a tough guy. I could do all these things that you say I'm not capable of. And so the double life was that once I went to school and I found a teacher named Dennis. Yeah, he's awesome. The double life started because I turned in an essay and he pulled me over after class and then he told me, that was a great piece of writing. You're a wonderful writer. And that was the very first time a teacher had ever told me I was good at doing anything.
Did you believe him?
I believed him without a doubt.
Good for you.
Not to sound all cocky or anything, but...
But you knew you were a writer inside. You knew.
Yeah.
And now someone else was bringing it out in you. Mm-hmm. I know when you were incarcerated, you and Dennis remained very close.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you maintained that closeness, kind of the same question I was asking of Miquelle. How did you retain that closeness?
Through letter correspondence. It's kind of an archaic way of corresponding, but I feel it's one of the better ways of doing it because to me, you can't hide anything in writing. So it started off with him writing letters about every week. And at first, I wouldn't respond all the time because I was, why does this white guy keep writing to me, right? And in the back of my head, whether I really thought about this or not, I really thought there was something in it for him. Because everybody that I grew up around, they don't just care, they don't lend you a hand just for any reason. They want something back. And finally, after months and months, I just went in with all my chips, and I noticed that I didn't want to go all in and really grasp this relationship because there was a chance of me getting hurt. But it was worth it, even if it did happen.
When you were first incarcerated and you had the opportunity to write, what did you want to write about? Did you want to write about the prison experience, or did you want to use it as a chance to go in your imagination and go somewhere else?
I did not want to write about prison. For me, prison was too stereotypical. Most of the stories that came out of there were the same stuff you see on TV, you read in books. What I kept on writing about without wanting to was about my childhood. Every single time, just like about the first 15, 20 pieces of writing were about me and my relationship with my mother. And what it did for me, I didn't know it at the time, was that I kept on revisiting these places, and every time I went back, I seen something different, something I didn't catch. And by the end of it, I was able to let it go and just feel good about me.
I want to bring you back into the conversation, Miquelle. Your mom has mastered, she's really invested in social media, which I find really interesting because it's worked for you and you're using it to work for her. Tell everyone a little bit about how your mom has helped you with your career by figuring out how to get your message out about you through social media.
My page went, my Instagram page at Miquelle West went
Good
viral.
girl. Good girl.
Last year, there was a story done on my mom by the Humans in New York, and there were many people that told their story that were in prison, but my mom didn't really speak on her story. She just kind of told everyone to go look at Miquelle's page, follow Miquelle, and my kids, she's cool, she's good. And like 40,000 people came onto my page from all over the world, and they were like, "We're here for you, you're amazing." And at that point, I never felt lonely anymore. Like, I was like, wow, all of these people are here supporting me, and it made the stakes go higher. Like, now I really can't give up because these people are all watching. So my mom was able to do that for me. She made my page go viral, and we were able to put our story out and get the word out behind her directing everyone to my Instagram.
And you learned the lesson so that you could, in turn, use social media to try to help your mom and potentially get her out of prison. Explain the hashtag that you developed.
I developed the hashtag Free Miquelle West, and it's, to me, a household hashtag. Everyone knows about it, or they're curious about it, and it's just pretty much in black and white, Free Miquelle West. And it's opened up a lot of doors. I was able to go to the White House and come here and speak to Google and do a lot of things, and just continue advocating and helping kids to understand that if your parents go to prison, that's not the end of the world, that you can just keep working and on your goals and make something of yourself.
That's interesting. This is a little bit off topic, but I thought about you when I was researching. And, you know, Sesame Street has introduced a character that has a parent in jail. And I thought about, wow, what if that had been around when you were little?
When I was like, why wasn't this around when I was little? I'm just happy it's here now, because it's been a topic that people kind of like to not talk about because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But we have to have these uncomfortable situations to bring awareness to these situations. If we keep sweeping them under the rug, no one will be aware. So I'm happy that kids can say, like, hey, I have a parent in prison.
And it brings awareness to kids whose parents aren't in prison to the situation as well. It doesn't have to be siloed just to kids who have parents who are incarcerated. John, you when you went to prison, I've interviewed a bunch of different artists from prison, and I always ask this: are you an artist who went to prison, or did prison make you an artist? Were you a writer in prison, or were you a prisoner who learned to write?
I think it may go both ways. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that, because like in prison, there's everything going on around you. There's this different world, but at the end of the day, it is a world and you are living in it. And when I wrote, it was my time to get away from all of everything around me. And so the experiences that I did have in there, they did impact me as a writer. Mm-hmm. I actually found like different pockets in prison where there are good people, there are good communities, there are people that are willing to put their hearts out into a certain program, anything. And that's when I started writing about that, because this was something that was hidden to me. I didn't think it really existed. But once you find it, you're gonna find good people in any place that you're in.
Well, we've talked about your writing a lot, so we need to hear some of your writing.
Okay.
You've got a poem. Tell us about this poem and what prompted you to write this.
This poem I wrote after a visitation. And I kind of went back to the cell and reflected on it and how I felt and how possibly those I love feel also. So this is called Ordinary Weekend, and it's in a Pops anthology called Cracked Mask. As I sit there and dwell, my head spins while trying to balance the worlds of love and hurt. She grabs my hands, and I don't know if she sees that they're tattered and beat, but not physically. I wonder if they look at me and feel disgust for a fool covered in concrete. They wait in long lines and drive down miles of open road to see if I will respond and in a way learn to love again. and not be afraid to have friends, and not scared to show my feelings, but understand that my life has meaning. Besides simmering in a pool of iron, where boots clank and the years wave goodbye. For these few seconds, I have it under control. A world is at ease. My hands sweat with remorse, and learn to ignore the hate and negativity that has built inside me. But the speaker announces that visiting is over. I give a hug that I will miss and spin away from those who make me feel like I'm worth living. They smile, but I know it hurts them as much as it does me. A feeling of gain and loss, a true oxymoron. Out they go, back to their iron-touched lives, and I pass through the doorway that leads to negativity.
That is beautiful, first of all.
Thank you.
You were very worried about inviting Dennis and his wife into your life. This idea of you were now engaged in a relationship with somebody behind bars. Why were you so worried about them?
I was so worried because I don't think I've ever been so emotionally invested in a relationship. And the few times that I have, they didn't turn out well. Mm-hmm. And so with them, I really started questioning myself. Why do I feel like this is, I never really knew my dad, but why do I feel like this is my dad and Amy's my mom when I have a mother? I felt kind of like that's a sense of betrayal to them, but this is just a different type of love that I'm experiencing. It's something that's really genuine, and it's not handed down to you. I chose to be loved by them.
And they chose you.
Yeah.
Before we go, Miquelle, tell everyone what the status is with your mom and what you plan to do going forward.
Well, the fight continues. The status is where we left off, the White House. I was invited to the White House. There was a conversation about clemency for justice. And it was a lot of false hope because I honestly was under the impression that my mom would come home. I thought that I was to the finish line. And then they sent us on our way, and a few months went by, and now President Obama's out of office, and my mom is still sitting there. So that's when I realized I'm not to the finish line. I'm halfway there. So I'm going to continue advocating and fighting for my mother. I get a little emotional at times. But even once I die, I'll fight for my mom in the afterlife. I'll continue to fight. Thank you.
And it's clear your mom fights for you, and Dennis Amy fought for you. What's that hashtag again before we go?
Free Miquelle West.
All right.
And you can follow the story on my Instagram.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.